Good morning. Or good afternoon, good evening, whenever you decide to watch this. That is A-OK with me. So, today's Wednesday, November 11th, and because it's November 11th, that means it's Veterans Day. This started off as Armistice Day, or a celebration of the end of World War I. But when World War II happened, we decided we wanted to have a day to celebrate all of our veterans, and so we shifted Armistice Day to Veterans Day. So, if you know somebody who has served in the American military, today's a day to celebrate their service. So reach out to them, thank them. If you have a family member, make sure and say thank you, because serving and protecting the country is one of the coolest things people can do for each other. So reach out to a veteran today. Be a good idea. So today, middle of the week, you've got that assignment that's due on Friday. So let's make sure that we're taking care of business and getting our stuff done. If you owe me any of the assignment from last week, that Reconstruction introduction, you're running out of time on that. So you got to make sure you get that to me soon. I've got grades in the grade book for those for you guys. And if you guys that already got them back, if you want to look at the feedback and resubmit it, I'm more than happy to let you do that. Look at it again. All right, just let me know. If you're having problems or questions with anything, please reach out. I'm more than happy to help. Don't forget, I have that half hour every day where I'm online. And I've kind of just been sitting by myself every day. So the Meet code for that is in your class rules that are down in the feed here in Classroom, if you're looking at that. So the goals for today, things that we did a quick review in class, just kind of talked briefly about some of the things we talked about so far, just a little like popcorn style, called on people, made people super uncomfortable by calling on them. So, you got that. So today we're going to look at two slides. So I think I may be talking to you guys a little bit longer today than I have been. And what we're going to try to do is I'm hoping that you can talk about the difference between Johnson and Congress and how they thought about Reconstruction and how they looked at things. And then we're going to start looking at this idea of like how life changed in the South by talking about this, by introducing the idea of the black codes. Then any time I had left over today, there is work time for that assignment that's due on Friday, the Reconstruction overview. So again, if you have any questions about any of this stuff we're going through, remember, you can obviously, since it's a video, pause it and try to think it through, and you can chat me with questions or email me with questions if you want it. Okay, so here we go. So that guy over there is Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson doesn't look like a very nice guy. Now, when Lincoln is shot by Booth at Ford's Theater, Andrew Johnson is his vice president. Now, Andrew Johnson is different than Lincoln. Lincoln was a Republican from the North. Andrew Johnson was actually a Democrat from the state of Tennessee, which was a southern state. Lincoln probably picked Johnson not just because maybe he had similar ideas, but because Lincoln thought that having a Southern Democrat as his vice president might be a good way to keep the South in the Union, and maybe a way to like bridge the gap between the two sides. Obviously, it didn't work. And when Lincoln was killed, Johnson takes over as the vice president. Okay, and so when Lincoln's death happens, Lincoln's plan kind of goes out the window too. The 13th Amendment still was a thing. The idea that we were going to free the slaves, which is a good idea right now to just go through the other ones. The 14th Amendment that you'll learn about gave all freedmen citizenship. The 15th Amendment gave all men the right to vote, except Native American men. We'll get into that later. So in 1865, the 13th Amendment gets passed and accepted, so you don't have to worry too much about that. The other thing that survives from Lincoln's plan is the Freedmen's Bureau, that group of people that were going to take care of the needy whites and black people, help educate them, get them the basic things that they need, and offer some protection. But when Johnson is sworn in, it becomes obvious right away that he has issues with Congress. For starters, the first and most simple issue, and I didn't put this on the slide, Johnson's a Democrat from the South. Almost everybody in Congress is a Republican from the North. Politically, not so good. So they're going to butt heads right away off of that idea. And so that's obviously going to be an issue. Now, they each had plans. Johnson had his own plan. Congress had his own plan, or their own plan, on how to do things. Now, remember, if you're like, why couldn't they compromise? They all wanted, the first big question of Reconstruction is who should be in charge? Because everyone wants to have the power. Everybody wants to be in control. And so in both plans, there was an oath of loyalty, just like Lincoln's. In Johnson's plan, 51% of people had to take an oath of loyalty, so just slightly more than half. In Congress's plan, 50% of people had to take an oath of loyalty. So see that wasn't that different. That was yeah. Okay. The second thing, they both wanted to free the slaves. Okay. They both agreed that the 13th Amendment was a good idea. So there you go. Now, the big issue was the Southern punishment part of things and some of the ideas. And so they all agreed that there should be some amount of Southern punishments, but the way that they agreed that should be done is what's different about the plans. They also disagreed on the purpose of Reconstruction. Johnson thought that Reconstruction should be just about putting the country back together and not really much else, where Congress thought that there needed to be some amount of Southern punishment and there needed to be some amount of protection given to the freedmen. Johnson wasn't so into the idea of protecting the freedmen. And so what Johnson starts doing that really irritates Congress almost right away, right out of the gate, is he starts pardoning people. Now, pardon means to forgive people for their crimes. And so Johnson starts pardoning people who are high-ranking old people in the South, the people that were in charge before. And those old Southern leaders try to take power back and kind of reestablish kind of the old way of doing things minus slavery, because they weren't going to be able to bring back slavery. And so federal troops have to be left in the South, even though the war is over, to help try and keep it says peace down below. So to help try and keep the peace and help try and keep order in the states and what's going on. So the thing to understand about this is really political. This isn't a big difference in ideas, because the ideas are not that different. This big rivalry forms, and honestly, it's almost like Johnson finds little ways to poke Congress. I'm going to pardon these people because it's going to annoy you. And as we keep moving through this chapter and Johnson's term as president, I think you're going to see that he was absolutely kind of a political instigator. Okay, and so the Southerners react to these plans, to these ideas that they're going to be told what to do, and their reactions aren't very good. Okay. And so when Southerners heard about the 13th Amendment, the idea that all the slaves were going to be free, they were obviously, they knew that was coming. They lost the war. They knew that was coming. They knew that was going to be part of things. They weren't happy about it, but they knew it was, it's going to happen. But the thing that they did realize is all it did was free the slaves. It didn't give them any rights, didn't give them any protection under the law, didn't give them any kind of help. It was just like, hey, you're free. Go. Good luck. Yay. All right. And because it didn't give them rights, those Southern leaders that Johnson pardoned, along with some new leaders in the South, figured out ways to hold the black people, the freedmen, back. They figured out ways to reduce the rights rather than being equal and having the same freedom. The first thing that they did was they passed something called the Black Codes. Okay. Black Codes were laws that only applied to the black people who lived in the South. I'll give you some for instances. It was illegal for a black person in most southern states to own a gun. It was illegal for a black person to buy, sell, or alcohol. It was illegal for a black person to interracially marry. The crazy part about that is the black person would be thrown in prison and the white person was often forgiven and sent along their merry way. It was generally accepted that if black people were walking down the sidewalk and a white person was walking toward them, that they would step down into the street and get out of the way. If it was a white woman, you weren't allowed to look at them. But they passed all these laws, curfews on black people. It was illegal for a black person to be unemployed. You could hold the pay of a black person for up to a year. So think about that. That means if you had a job and today was your payday, all right, November 11th, 2020, your boss didn't really have to pay you until November 11th, 2021. What are you going to do about it? You can't quit. That's against the rules. You can be thrown in jail for not having a job. And so these laws put black people in a position where even though they were free, they had to follow so many unfair laws that it was almost like they were being kept in a state of semi-slavery. It was like being a little kid and having no free choice in your life. Along with that, you have hate groups like the KKK and the White Brotherhood that start up. And they begin using intimidation to try to limit what the Black people that live in the South do, but also to try to force them out, to get them to leave, to go to the North or whatever. That intimidation quickly turns into violence, and things like lynchings, like tarring and feathering, numerous horrible ways to kill people. And it was basically unsafe to be Black in the South, or to be a white person who helped Black people in the South, because the KKK would target you. As this is all going on, the South is also moving towards more of a segregated society, or the idea of segregation. Segregation is where we split people up based on a characteristic. To give you a simple example, you were probably segregated as small children, where they set you boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl in a class, because I don't really understand why they did that. I think they thought they were keeping the boys apart, but I don't know. Okay. But that was the way you could be segregated. If we took the classroom and we put all the white students on one side and everybody else on the other, that would be segregating the classroom. But in the South, that segregation went a step further. Not only were people split based on race, but the white people got the better things, or they were allowed to do things that the Black people could not. There would be like two drinking fountains. One would say whites only, one would say coloreds only. The whites only drinking fountain would have cold, clean, regular water that you could drink. The coloreds only drinking fountain might have like Monashaw quality water. Black people weren't allowed to stay in certain hotels. They weren't allowed to eat in certain restaurants. They weren't allowed to go to certain churches. And so society became extremely split, but it was split in a way where one group of people had everything and the other group of people had basically nothing. And anytime that Black people found a way to get ahead, the Southerners would add new Black codes or find ways to use segregation to stop that gain in rights and freedoms. Okay, so it's a pretty terrible setup. Really, when you hear people talk about systemic racism today, or a system that basically promotes a split or promotes one group of people getting less than the other group of people, you can really kind of look at this time period as the start of that. You can even still see some of that segregation when you go into cities and certain places, where you see neighborhoods or areas of the city that are, this is the all Black part of town, and this is the all white part of town. And you'll see that maybe the property values aren't as high and things like that. And we'll get more into that as the chapter kind of goes on. So listen, use the rest of the time that you have allotted for American history today to get caught up on assignments, to get things done. Odds are that we are going to have a short quiz on Friday when we get done talking about the things that we need to talk about in class, along with any work time that you might need. So if you have any questions, please reach out. Don't forget about that office half hour from 1 to 1:30 every day. The link is in the class rules that you can find in Classroom. Have a good day. Hope you're well. Hope everyone you know is well. Bye-bye.